Hey guys, how are you going today? And I am here with Anthony Hain, and we're going to go over his third place SS4 Vegeta ramp. Uh, I was here with Anthony not too long ago going over this same deck, and he has repeated his topping, and we're back at it again. So congratulations, Anthony, and well done.
Thank, thank you very much, Max. It's good to be back.
Good, good to have you back. All right, let's just get right into it. So we have our leader, SS4 Vegeta. So on the front side, when it attacks, you get a draw card, and then when you deal damage to your opponent's leader when attacking, you can look at the top card of your deck. If it's mono blue, place it in your energy in rest mode. Then when your life's at 4 or less, you can draw one and flip your leader over. The backside is much the same. When it attacks, you draw one. However, it has a second order where once per turn when your opponent activates a counter skill, you can switch your leader to active mode, which is very, very nice. Yeah, so any quick comments on the leader? Do you still think this is the best blue leader at the moment?
One thing I will say is it will beat all other blue decks. I'm yet to find a blue deck which can beat it consistently or survive consistently. And the reason for this blue leader is it just applies extra pressure and gains card advantage to generate natural ramp. The deck can function if you get the ramp off, it can get function without the ramp going off. It can survive in either direction. So it's just the best suited leader for this. It's a very versatile leader. On the Awakened side, being able to restand makes it so that even if you make a play and your opponent says, I'm going to activate a counterplay, you still get another swing off, and that's extra cards that your opponent loses. So it's just a value leader, which people are underestimating and don't. It's good.
Yeah, you do generate a lot of advantage with this bad boy. Moving on. Similar to last list, we have our Unison plus Ram package. So we have 3 SS4 Vegeta, Rise of the Super Warrior. When you play, if your leader is mono blue, look at the top 4 cards of the deck. You can choose any number of mono blue cards among them, add them to your hand, or charge them, up to you, and you put the remaining at the bottom of your deck. Then it has a nice nifty order at the end of your turn. You get to switch it to active mode. You have one of the best cards in the deck in the game, Majin Buu, Assault of Aiden Destruction, which is a blue Unison for 4 energy with double strike and blocker. It's got an active main for +0. You draw a card, and at the start of your next turn, you get an untap Unison and untap one of your mono blue energy. Then it's -1 when your opponent attacks with a battle card. You can choose one of their battle cards and bottom deck it. And 3 God Sealing Techniques. So same ratios as
Well,
last time.
yeah,
Anything you
these
want to
haven't
add to these
changed.
guys?
I wouldn't up or change any of these. The SS4 Vegeta and the leader both only work with mono blue cards, so I was very careful again to make sure that the deck is completely mono blue so that they never miss, which is important because there are many times with the SS4 that you would either say want to draw 4 if you're up against hand control, or if you're up against a slower matchup. It is actually a very good reason to charge 3 of the cards you see and add one of them to your hand, being that if you have 6 energy and you charge 3 of them, that's 9 energy. And so on the following turn, you charge energy number 10. 10 energy is the big play for the deck if you actually want to kill your opponent. So that's always relevant. The Majin Buu Unison is the reason for this deck. Just because being able to play it on turn 3 and setting up such a powerful card so early is very, very strong. And everyone who's played this in the other leaders know that it comes out on turn 4. It's really awesome. Bringing it on turn 3 is even stronger. God Sealing, keep it at 3. If you have it at 4, you see it too much. You don't need it early game, and in fact, you don't need it all that often, just because the deck has so many other ways to remove cards and to control the game that it's really only the odd effect here or there that you want to prevent, and so you only need to see really 1 or 2 of them a game. So 3 is fine.
Yeah, very good. And then we have your famous Boo package. You have Majin Buu Revitalizing Absorption. When it's played, draw a card for 3 blue energies. If all cards in your leader and energy area are mono blue, and your opponent has 3 or more energy, you may play 1 Majin Buu card with an energy cost of 7 from your energy area. If you do, place this card in your energy and rest mode, then place up to 1 blue Son Gohan Adolescence card with an energy cost of 4 or less from your deck in your drop, and shuffle your deck. You can only play blue Majin Buu only battle cards for the turn. And then you have the Ultimate Absorption Majin Buu, which you play off it. When this card is played from an energy area, choose up to 1 battle card in your drop and place it under this card. Then choose up to 1 of your blue energies and switch it to active mode. Auto once per turn when this card's attacks is there is a Son Gohan Adolescent card placed under this card. Choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards, place it under this card, and switch this card to active mode. And then you have the Son Gohan Adolescents for the deck. The 3-drop Great Saiyan Man Punisher of Evil, which has Deflect, Barrier, Blocker, and Revenge. Auto once per turn with this card KOs one of your opponent's battle cards. Switch this card and up to one of your Mono Blue Energy to active mode. A lot of text on these cards. This combo allows for a lot of big plays. Why don't you quickly walk us through?
So this little package here serves 3 purposes. The first purpose is it's a value engine, and the reason it's a value engine is being able to play a dual attack triple striker that can remove a threat for what essentially amounts to 3 energy if you do it all in one turn, or 2 energy if you split it between the turns, is extreme and huge. It resolves as an early game potential win con. Now, why do I say that? In some of the more aggressive matchups against SS4 Vegeta, sometimes you end up with opponents that will try and push you in fairly hard, and they leave themselves open to like 3 or 4 life, and they think that they're safe on that following turn. And you might only have the 4 energy, but if your 4 energy is pay 1, play a boo, draw a card, pay 3, play the 7-drop, put the 1-drop in, untap 1, you still have an energy open, and swing with 2 dual attacks with an energy open that you could put a UI Kamehameha on top of it, and you're suddenly swinging for 40k triple strike plus whatever combo you have. What they thought was, oh, he can't kill me on the next turn, suddenly becomes you're dead. And the other reason for it is that after Android 17, being able to have a 1-drop on the board already, if we want to do the actual math, if you have the 10 energy that I referenced earlier, you pay 1 for Majin Buu, you pay 7 for Android 17, and sorry, you have the 1-drop on the board, you play Android 17 for 7, and then the other 3 is the activator on the Majin Buu, so that you can play out your Buu after 17 has already wiped an opponent's hand. So playing a dual attack triple striker with no hand to defend that will suck up a blocker when it attacks usually ends games. So indeed. That's its other purpose.
Yeah, very strong package.
Yeah, the Great Saiyan Man is the best choice for this simply because it's not just a random Gohan; it's a card you actually want to play in this deck in several matchups. Like one of the other matchups that we'll get into later, this card single-handedly just says the entire game is automatically a win. So
very good card. Do enjoy it in the deck. Then we have our small little Bojack package. So we've got 3 Galactic Buster down from 4 previously, 2 Bojack on a Rampage, and 2 Bojack the Evildoer.
I actually don't think I ever had 4 in it, but in any case, the 3 Galactic Buster is right. Just because if you have any more, it clogs, and if you ever need to activate another one, then you don't have one in your hand, you can always Zeno Super Combo one back and activate it again. Ideally, I only want to play the 8-drop, because the 8-drop Bojack is the one that gets its effects off before it comes into play, and it just generates a lot more value. The only reason that the 4-drop was included in this version is because in Best of 1, the 4-drop deals with some of the aggro matchups a little bit easier. In Best of 3, the Bojack Evildoer can completely come out of the deck and only comes in from the sideboard. But otherwise, the actual Bojack package, just to be able to play a threat on your opponent's turn that can potentially end the game on the following turn, is just a nice form of removal and advantage to have, and it's worth running in most blue decks, especially this one.
It has been splashed in every blue deck at the moment. Then moving on to our negates. 3 Dimension Magics, 2 Internal Energy Shift, and 2 Vegeta Ready to Rumble. I'll let you talk about internal energy shift, but why do we only have 3 Dimension Magics in here as well?
Okay, so in order to save on some deck space, I wanted to change up my negate lineup. Now, I had the Final Shine in it previously, and I still really like the card, but for Best of 1, Final Shine wasn't so much performing. For Best of 3, it could come back in. Dimension Magic was at 4, but Dimension Magic often ended up untapping so much energy that I wasn't able to use all the energy. So I decided, well, if I want to keep my energy open, but I don't need to untap another random energy, what card can I use that can generate another form of random value? And so I thought, okay, Internal Energy Shift is a card. I run a whole bunch of blockers in this deck. And if it happens to hit a battle card when an Internal Energy Shift is activated, for those who don't know how an Internal Energy Shift works, when you activate it, it negates the attack. And then you check the top card of your opponent's deck, similar to Obuni. After all, Obuni's on the image. And if it's a battle card, which most of the time it will be, and you don't really mind if it's not, just because you have so much defensive power, you activate it not when it's like not your last resort that you need to keep the energy open. You activate it when it can potentially add extra value. If it hits a battle card, you can turn one of your blockers back to active and restand the energy you used to play it. So it becomes like a Whis' Coercion that also restands a blocker. Now, imagine blocking with your 6-drop 30k Vegeta, and they go, oh, no combo, that's fine, I'll attack the next one. And you activate Internal Energy Shift, and it hits, and you restand Vegeta again. Like, I have to go past the Vegeta again? You could do the same thing with Great Saiyaman. If Great Saiyaman's rested, and this brings two potential interactions. One is Great Saiyaman blocks, kills something, restands, blocks again, and then Internal Energy Shift blocks it, helps it block a third one. Alternatively, it means you can attack with Great Saiyaman, and by attacking with Great Saiyaman, you can try and KO, drag another card out of their hand, and on the crackback, you can actually activate an Internal Energy Shift, restand the Saiyaman, and then still get the ability to block with it. Yeah. So it gives you that extra, those extra options. Just because the extra energy wasn't needed, it acts as a 4th and 5th copy of Dimension Magic with a potential upside.
Yeah, and then Vegeta Ready to Rumble, probably the best floodgate for blue at the moment, and because you've got so much energy, there's no point not using this.
The reason it's the best floodgate for blue is that it's not as easily hit with counterplays. Like you got Ohan, for example, is hit by Super Kamehameha and Focus Breakthrough and a whole bunch of those other little ones as well, which are in a lot of decks. Whereas actually paying 4 for this, as opposed to paying 3 in Baby, means it's immune to a lot of those. You still have to watch out for things that say it's not going to hit the board, but there are less of them, so you can be a little bit you can use it a little bit more readily.
Yeah, indeed. Moving on, we've got some other beautiful cards in the deck. We've got 4 Xeno Edge of Space, which is our super combo of choice, 4 Ultra Instinct Goku's Kamehameha, and 3 Sensu Beans. Now, remember you saying last time that we mulligan for Xeno Edge of Space and Ultra Instinct Goku's Kamehameha to push through those early attacks. Is this still the case?
Absolutely. You want to see at least one copy of UI Kamehameha or a copy of Xeno Edge of Space, preferably more than one, but if you see one of each or one or the other, that's your goal, because it means that you can attack with something big enough that your opponent is usually discouraged from comboing over it, so it allows you to get the extra ramp off. And if they do combo over it, then they're losing an enormous amount of cards in hand, so they really are the main point of the deck. The 3 beans that we didn't discuss previously as much, we may have even left it out completely, is really just for that little bit of energy manipulation to allow you to play a big Bojack or to add an extra 5k to your leader if you need to survive a specific turn. It mainly, it sits in the hand doing almost nothing until you come up against either a deck that wants to spam a whole bunch of 15ks, or until you very specifically want to untap a whole bunch of energy all at once. But you're not using it bean for the sake of using bean. It's literally there for either one turn or a specific slow down your opponent from killing your leader turn.
Yep. Very, very good cards.
Depending on how aggressive the meta is, you can potentially up bean to 4. But it really depends on how many decks are playing 15ks.
Yeah, it is very, very versatile. And I'm not sure if you saw, but Team FOE came out with a first turn kill. Not really, but a lot of pressure on the first turn with King Vegeta, and Bean can help a lot against that. And then we have some more spicy tech cards for best of 1. We've got Kai Keeping Watch, which very, very good card in this current scene, I suppose. Borgos, Bardock's Crewmate, anti-blue card, and Tragedy Overground, our super spicy tech from last one. Was East Kai mainly there for, I guess, aggressive combo cards on your opponents, playing them on their turn, or...
It wasn't so much for aggressive combo cards as it was when I had excess energy and I wanted to use the energy for something. This was a cantrip that I could draw a card, and it would dissuade my opponent from actually stopping and interfering with the plays that I wanted to play. For example, against a rival decks, they're going to have to start losing cards to a rival, which happened in one of those matches. If they're going to try and negate with a card that says like a Topo or maybe format the new Green Boo or something, they're actually going to lose more cards to activate them and play those cards. So it's just a versatile card that discourages your opponent from playing on your turn. And if your opponent spends the energy to remove it, then they're not spending necessarily the energy to kill you or remove other things. I don't actually expect it to live on the board for more than really one turn, but it adds a little bit of extra value. Borgos is there because I thought about having 3 copies of East Kai just because I wanted the extra cantrips. But Borgos is there simply because there is fair amount of potential blue coming up just because blue didn't get hit by the ban list. And I thought that putting in a Borgos is going to dissuade people from actually using Dimension Magic or other things that untap energy on my turn. And it just means that at a random time when they think, oh, I'm safe, suddenly you play Borgos and they're, oh, I'm not so safe. And it can really cripple decks. Baby, you don't really have a bad matchup to begin with, but it hurts them enormously. Soul Striker, it can hurt. SS3, it doesn't hurt as much, but it does mean that they can't just randomly play a bigger defender and then Dimension Magic back up again. For example, if they leave enough energy to play Vegeta Ready to Rumble and they play that, but you trunks it back to their hand, and then they're like, oh, I can't D-Magic because there's a Borgos on the board, that could hurt them. So there are ways to use it. Tragedy's main board, whether it's best of 3 or best of 1, that card is amazing, and it would only come out against a deck that you would never use it against. But in most games, you have the option to play it because you ramp so quickly. You get to the late game in most occasions, and so many decks it just shuts down. For heaven's sake, it shuts down this deck. If you played against this own deck, you should be winning that game. In fact, the only way to really counter it would either be use the Zeno Unison, which this deck really wouldn't run, but some could. But then not many people are going to be hanging around with a Zeno just to try and remove a Tragedy, although you could. High-level players. The other way to try and counter this deck playing Tragedy is to activate a Tragedy of your own.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the few things you can.
Yeah, and if you can't beat them, join them, and then it's a game of who has more cards in hand and who can beat harder with the leader.
Exactly.
Yeah, gotta love Tragedy. The super secret spicy tech.
I was going to say, Max, you've had a little bit of a test playing this deck now. How have you found Tragedy?
I never got to play Tragedy. My games didn't go that long.
You're playing right first.
I did play against a Cell Surge deck. No, it was a OG Broly deck where I just kind of got to 6 energy and was able to go tap 6 for SS4 Vegeta and draw 4 cards, and then the next turn do the same thing and draw 4 cards, and the game at that point was kind of over. And then I played against Red Broly and that didn't end well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, play against any blue deck or anything remotely slower that wants to play anything big, and Tragedy will win you the game.
Oh, 100%. I'm dreading this. I'm dreading this deck in general when I pull up my hatch deck. Not looking forward to playing against blue. And then moving on to
this deck will sit on hatch.
Sure. Don't get me started, man. SCR like cards we've got in the deck. We have Android 17 turning the tide. We've got Baby Golden Avenger, and we have Baby Hatch. I'll let you talk over your 4 secret rares in the deck.
Sure. Baby Hatch is the only SCR for this deck because it's just there to end an opponent's turn, and it's not always the opponent's turn that is the one that they're going to kill you. It's more often than not a stabilizing turn, whether it be play a Unison and keep Unison at maximum markers so that you don't lose all the cards in your hand trying to defend it, or just making sure that you live past a very specific turn to get it to a specific number of energy so that the rest of your hand is live and able to defend you. It's more of a utility card in that regard. So if you do see it in your opening hand, keep it, just because you're more often than not going to use it in the earlier turns as opposed to the later turns. Baby, was it 2? So the Golden Ape, was it 2, but went down to 1 simply because I wasn't finding myself needing more than 1. And the only time you would need more than 1 is if they're going to try and, like, say, play against Invoker and they're going to try and rip one out of your hand, for example. But for then, you can go into game 2 and sideboard it in. For best of 1, I only found I needed 1. Just because you only ever did it on the turn that you were going to kill someone.
Yeah.
Either they're relying on a very specific negates to keep them alive, in which case they die at that moment, or it makes sure that your Android 17 goes through in some of the later matchups, which was relevant in during this event because someone did actually try to Jiren me, but I did it at a moment where I had 12 energy. So when I played Android 17 and they Jirened and I Baby Aped, they scooped.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
No. 17, you don't run it at 2 because you ramp, so you can see it earlier. You want to see it earlier. You might get it off as early as turn 5 or 6, but you should have it for later when you need it.
Yeah. Makes sense. And let's move on to your matchups. So round 1, you played against SS4 Vegeta. Such a rogue deck that's not very good. Must have been a pretty easy matchup to win.
Well, what I think is rather funny is that It didn't take long after a couple of random SS4 tops kind of happened, and a whole bunch of people are suddenly trying out the leader. So it's starting to become popular, if not nowhere else, especially in Australia. People are starting to catch on.
Yeah.
And so this first one was actually, I think he was from the US, but he was not playing the same deck as what I was doing. He was running like a bit of Bojack Package and a little of like just mono blue good stuff. And his game plan just didn't go very well at all. So like I comboed over his first attack, dealt damage, ramped, played my Boo Unison early, and he never got a single damage in. So I actually ended that game with 8 life. And so the game basically ended me having 8 life, me having lots of cards on board. In fact, it was disgusting. It was like 7 or 10 battle cards in play, plus tragedy. And he had no hand either as well, because 17 came down as well. So the game was just extremely one-sided. Playing the mirror match in this one is tricky because you have to work out which ramps you can allow, which ones you can't. But I'll let people playtest that one and work that one out for themselves. Round 2, UI Gohan Skillless, the Arrival package, as one of Joey's favorites. That deck doesn't really have a way to beat this, but in this particular matchup, it was rather rude because seeing the Gohan and seeing that he was potentially playing an Arrival package, just because it's what most people run with that. On my opening hand, I saw both of my East Kais, so I kept them both. And then on turn 2, I played them both. And so he was hoping to Arrival his Bojack in and his Goku hit in. And in order to try and get his cards on board, he had to bottom deck 4 cards from his hand.
Wait, did he actually play through it?
He needed to. Otherwise, his deck was turned off. He didn't have a way to remove them. He needed to play and try to rest them and to try and kill them. So he had to lose half his hand. Just to these guys. It was really disgusting. But even without them, he doesn't actually have a way to push through damage. Just because the deck wants to play on your turn, you just need to be cognizant of the fact that you don't actually need to swing a lot of the time. For example, on the second to last turn, so I actually didn't swing with my Unison. And after the game, he said, "You didn't swing with your Unison. I was waiting to play my Supreme Kai secret rare on that one." I was like, "Yeah, no. You play on my turn. No thanks. I've already done the swing I wanted. You had your one chance to play it.
Yeah.
It was just my leader swing. That was it." And so he didn't get to play it. He tried to play it on instead. What happened is he tried to play his Supreme Kai on my turn. And so when he attacked and played Supreme Kai during the combo step, I went super combo, Bean, Galactic, Bojack, remove his Supreme Kai. So he never got to use it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that deck it's not close. They can't do anything to you. They can get you down to 4. They can't get you below 4. And if they do get you below 4, they spend so many resources doing it that it's not a problem.
That's fair. And then you got your revenge against your Cell Surge opponent from last tournament.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, last time all I needed to do was do an extra draw and I would have won it. This one, we changed turns. So I went first, which means he has an easier time doing hand destruction, but it also means I have a faster time ramping. I got my first SS4 off, so I drew 4 with it, and it was awesome, and it stabilized greatly. But what was interesting was that when I drew 4, one of the cards I drew was Android 17. And so he knew that I had Android 17 in my hands, and it forced him to push extra hard to remove all the cards in my hand, because if I got the next turn, I was playing 17 and I was killing him. And it meant that he used both of his Cell Earths destroying Kamehamehas on his turn to remove it, which meant that it left me with no hand, but it left me with lots of life, and I can draw for turn, which is what I did. I can potentially swing with leader to draw another card, and I can draw a card off my Unison. So I get to draw 3 cards on my turn, and if any one of them is a bomb, I win the game. As it turns out, one of them was, the other 2 were not. The first card I drew, 1-drop Boo, so I played 1-drop Boo, made a 7-drop, and killed him with a triple striker. But the other 2 cards could very easily have been, it could have been an Android 17, if it's not the first one. It could have been another 6-drop Vegeta, which again would outright win the game at that point, because you'd be drawing 4 against a deck that is now no longer has any cards in his hand because he's burnt them all trying to get rid of my hand.
Yeah.
It could have been a Golden Ape if I saw that. It could have been it could have been almost anything. Like there are several threats that I could have seen at that point that would have just outright ended the game. Even if I saw a Galactic Buster, that would be enough, because I could just activate a Galactic Buster to play the Bojack from my energy, and that would end it.
Yeah.
And I say that would end it because he wouldn't have had a way to and I say the Bojack, it would have been the 4-drop, because that one can attack immediately. So yeah, he just ran out of things to do. The draw 4 on Vegeta wins the hand control matchup. It's amazing that most hand control decks aren't actually able to stop you from ramping, so you get there pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Round 4, you had King Cold. Now, King Cold is a deck that takes a lot of advantage from people self-awakening and taking their own life and not having blockers, which basically is everything your deck's not.
Exactly.
So I'm assuming that
Yeah.
one went pretty much play just swing leader, play blocker, and chill.
So let me first say that the King Cold player played it really, really well. He did everything he realistically could. He cleared my blockers as much as he could. He tried to reduce my hand as much as he could. But it was really me who was choosing when and how I took my life, because I was able to more or less pick and choose which swings I was going to allow through. And so, just to maximize my potential advantage, I was actually I went down to 1 life on like turn 4 or 5, but it was very, very safe turn 4 or 5, just because like, by that point I didn't really need to have more than 1 life. I had like 12 cards in hand and heaps of potential defensive options, and his resources were not enough to push through, and I had the option to kill more or less immediately. Um, I ended the game when he was trying to do as much as he could. He ended up tapping all but one of his energy, trying to get as much advantage as possible, because he basically had his board was clear, his hand was dwindling. He needed to generate some play, and leading himself with 1 energy meant that I was free to get Android 17 before having to worry about a Jiren. So the game ended very, very quickly after that. But he played it really, really well, and it was a fun game. So kudos to him, and it's a little unfortunate he didn't do better after this particular round, because he was undefeated up until this point.
Was it Seraphim Zane?
No.
No, it was a different one. Okay. I know he's
Yeah.
quite a good player that was also on King Cold this tournament. And then
Yeah.
round 5, you had your second mirror of the day.
Yeah, the deck's popular. What can we say? So this was actually against the person that actually finished second in the event, which is a weird, because we played against each other in round 5, and so he ended up getting ahead of me on tiebreakers, because I had a couple of people that I played against that dropped out afterwards, which was a little unfortunate. That game was, again, just as one-sided as the first one. He also was not running the Boo package, and the Boo package makes a big difference for value on your turn, just because it's not an easy package to stop. For example, do you want to Trunks the 1-drop? Probably not. Do you want to activate a Trunks when I pay 3 for the Boo? Sure. You're using the Trunks from your hand. I can choose not to play the Boo. And because I have the ability to play a threat on my turn and the ability to play a threat on his turn, that's what made this particular one one-sided, because he was playing heavily into the Bojack package, into the Galactic package, and so he was almost exclusively relying on playing on my turn, whereas I was trying to play on both turns. So that won it very fairly easily. And so I was still on 7 life at the end of the game. I allowed him to ramp once, but only because he was tapped out and he wasn't able to stop me from ramping back again. And when I dropped Tragedy later in the game, he couldn't play the game. And he, for whatever reason, said that he didn't run Tragedy because he thought it was clunky. But it was obviously a game ender at this point, because he's playing everything in his deck costs 4 or more, apart from the absolute bare little dudes that can't attack or do anything. So the game was over at that point.
Yeah, makes sense. And then your arch nemesis, I think in the last 3 tournaments you've played with this deck, King Vegeta has got you 3 times.
Yeah, and which is annoying, because I've played against King Vegeta so many times on Untap and in other places that I can actually I can normally win that matchup most of the time. And what usually is required is a combination of 2 beans or a bean and a hatch, or hatch plus a negates on a turn afterwards. And as a result, if you don't see those particular pieces, they can just kill you.
Yeah.
And so basically what happened is I saw 1 bean, and I didn't see the second bean or hatch, and as a result, I wasn't able to generate enough defensive combo power, and so I ended up dying the turn before I stabilized. If he was not able to kill me on the turn, and it wasn't like it was far off, like it was a tough kill, but he was able to kill. if he hadn't been able to kill me on that exact turn, the following turn was going to be followed by an SS4 Vegeta to draw and ramp, followed by a Vegeta ready to rumble on the following turn, which would have shut down that turn because I would have had blocker, Unison blocker, plus Unison bottom deck, plus negate in hand. So he would have not been able to kill the following turn, and the game would have ended the turn after that.
Yeah.
So if I'd seen either a second bean or a hatch, then I would have won that match as well.
Yeah, but very good. Congratulations, Anthony. Before we sign off, is there any shout outs you would like to give or anything else you'd like to say?
Shout outs as usual to my brother for being an awesome testing partner. Shout out to all the guys at Cardtastic Locals, especially Benny, who has been willing to give me a couple of games playing against this deck, even though he doesn't necessarily enjoy playing against the deck. My brother, who doesn't enjoy playing this deck at all, when I say he doesn't want to play against it, he just despises playing against this, at least when I'm playing it. And shout out to all the guys that run TAC. Shout out to Christelle. Shout out to the judges who did an awesome job, especially in the final when I was just double checking a particular ruling where we had something that come up for those who, I think someone streamed it, but you can find it. Where I was just querying a particular ruling. The judges were awesome. So yeah, thanks to everyone for help making the event what it was.
Too easy. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time. See ya.
See ya.